Much fun.
Very nice. Okay. Okay, we're holding on Nun Vav. That's 56. We're holding by Masav Ravina. Yeah. You post like where we're holding? Or do you post the share, the time of the share? Okay. Okay, so what happened over here is like this, that we said that Mishnah says that if someone if someone eats Chumas Meiser of the Mai, that means he eats the Truma that he took from produce that he got from an Amaretz, the Trumas Meiser. And the Truma itself isn't a problem because the Amaratzim, they take Truma. It's only the Meiser that they're not careful with. So if they're not careful with the Meiser, then maybe not careful also with the Trumas Meiser. So he ended up, it's really only supposed to be eaten by a Kohen. This fellow eats it, so now he has to pay an extra fifth. Now, even though this is only a rabbinic prohibition, it's because it's demai. It's demai means that it's from it's the doubt. It's a doubtful case. It's only a rabbinic problem. But nevertheless, he has to pay an extra fifth. So Rabbi Lazar had a question. He said, 1 second. It's only a rabbinic law. Why are they being so strict that you have to pay the extra fifth? So Shmuel came along and said that it's the opinion of Rabbi Meir that says that if a woman receives a get with missing the statement of a funny nechem, so the child becomes a mamzer. So Rabbi Meir is very strict about rabbinic law, and he'll make someone even a mamzer because if that's the case, he's also strict about Trumas Meiser, and you have to pay the extra fifth. And then we had some questions on that. What was the question? We had Rav Sheshus, who asked the next question.
Kesef.
Yeah, Rav Sheshus had a question. You think Rav Meir is really so strict? He's not so strict when it comes to these things. You see that you can redeem demai in a way that you won't redeem. You won't redeem if it would have been regular meiser. So he says Rav Meir is actually lenient about redemption, but he's only strict about eating it. So when eats it when he's not supposed to, so that's when we're strict. That's why he has to pay the extra fifth. But with redemption, we have some leniencies. Now we're holding by Ravina. I'm sorry. That was Rav Shesh's question. Rabbi Yosef gave the answer. Now Ravina has a question. Maser Ravina asks, someone purchases from a baker bread from a baker. The baker is Namaretz. You don't know if he separated the Meiser. So Meiser Minacham Alatzina. So you have to take Meiser again. And you can take the Meiser in a way that you can take from a hot loaf on a cold loaf. A warm loaf, a hot loaf of bread is going to be better than a cold loaf. And you can take also from a cold loaf on a hot loaf. I feel mitvusim harbi, even if it comes from many batches, many molds, like different shapes of. That's what Rav Meir says. Now, we understand what it means that you can take from a cold loaf and a hot loaf, even though one of them is better than the other one. That's following the Rabbi Loi's view. Rabbi Loi. This is I think it's an Amira. Rabbi Loi. It's not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Loi's father. It's a later Amira Rabbi Loi that was in Eretz Yisrael, I think. Yeah. This fellow is just selling the bread. That's a point. Yeah. Even though it says a baker. So it's following Rabbi Loi. That's how it makes sense. That the Truma works, even though it's not the same quality. Usually you say that you're supposed to have the same quality. That when you separate truma, it should be the same quality as the produce that you're fixing. But Rabbi Lai says that it's good. You should not have a sin when you're separating the best from it. It made it a kodesh nesiyas chet lama, but if it doesn't work, then why would it be a sin? You didn't do anything. Must be it works, and it's still a sin. You can't determine obviously it works. Okay, so that's what we're saying. That sorry, we're saying it's effective. So if it wasn't effective, then it wouldn't have been a sin. Ella, the question is, Ella fila mitfusim harbe.
Say mutar also.
It's
mutar.
It's
like
mutar, but it's just not. That's an expression.
It's not a. Not done well.
Right. And it says, I feel mitfusim harbe, when it says from many different batches, leichash til masel afrushim min achayev ala pater min apater ala chayev. 1 second, you have a problem because you're taking meiser from something that may be exempt from meiser, because this fellow, like Hillel said, is purchasing the bread from a bunch of different people, and could be that one of them took meiser, one didn't take meiser. And you're separating meiser now. It could be separating it from something that was already meiser was already taken from, and the one that meiser wasn't taken from is still considered tevel, and or the opposite, or maybe you're taking from the one that the meiser wasn't taken from, and you're taking it for something that was. It ends up that you're giving it could be you're giving tevel because you're not separating off anything. Well, so how does that work? Abaya, so this is a strong question. Abaya says, goes over the whole Gemara over here. Abaya says, Rabbi Elazar Shaprika Kashle. Rabbi Elazar's first question was a good question. His question was, why would be being so strict on a rabbinic law? Shmuel le Shaprika Mashani le. And Shmuel did not give him a good answer. Shmuel's answer was that we're strict about the rabbinic law. Shmuel says we're strict about rabbinic law when it's dealing with Mises Besim, when it's dealing with the death penalty by the court. It's talking about a woman that's not really divorced and she's living with another man. So that's death penalty by the court. Rabbi Elazar is talking about someone eating truma. That's his case. So the fact that we're strict by death penalty by the court is an raya that we're going to be strict also by someone eating truma that gets a death penalty by heaven. Maybe by the get we're more strict. Yeah, I think you mentioned this yesterday. That could be the cases aren't similar. Rav Sheshes doesn't have a good question. The Kamalei Misa, Misa Rav Sheshes lav, because they were talking about Misa, which means the Zar eating truma, and Rav Sheshes comes to tell you about Misa Sheni, which is a prohibition not to redeem it in the wrong way. It was Misa Sheni, it wasn't eating truma. It says that you shouldn't eat it outside of your shalayim. Whatever the case is, Rav Sheshes' question, Rav Yosef Shapir Kamashani, Rav Yosef gave a good answer. This is Abai talking about his teacher. Rav Yosef answered a shvacha question well, right? El Ravina, but for Ravina. Why is he asking from the baker? He should be asking from the bread wholesaler. The Tanan started in the Mishnah, someone that buys bread from a palter. Called the Fusat of Rameir. They actually have to take meiser from everyone, which means that Rameir is strict about rabbinic law. What are you going to say? Palter mitrei tlasid gabri zaven. The reason why you have to take from every single one independently, that's because the palter, this wholesaler, he buys from many different people. But the baker, he only buys from one person, and that's why you can take one meiser from one on the other. because it all came from the same person. I don't know why it says nachtem nami. Nachtem michad gabra zav. It's like a contrast, and it's not an also. Okay. Rav Amar, Rav says, Shmuel Shaper Kamashani Le Shemi Sabailam. Shmuel gave a good answer, even though Abaya said Shmuel did not give a good answer. Rav says Shmuel did give a good answer, because even though the case that the Gad was a death penalty by Bezdin, and this was a death penalty by heaven, he says, well, death is death. So it's a comparison. Following things, there's no concept of price fraud with these things. In other words, whatever the price is, there's no return. Can't say that I was defrauded. So, the item number one that doesn't have this concept is havadim, slaves. It means whatever you sell a slave for, that's going to be its price. Now we're going to see in the Gemara, if when it says ein lamayna, usually the term ayna is used by 1/6. The term for more than 1/6 of overcharging. The term for more than ayna is called bittul mekach. Sale is invalid. So we know that we don't have ayna 1/6. We'll see in the Gemara if you have bittul mekach. But definitely 1/6 is still, the sale's still going to be good. Bashtaris, someone sells a document that contains in it a loan, he sells to someone else to collect. Sorry, if he sells property, realty. Also over there's no enough. Ekdeshis, we have two possibilities. Either it's a gizbar, the treasurer from the Beis Hamikdash is selling something that's hekdesh, or if someone had his own sacrifice that got a mum, and now he's selling that. That also there's no enough. Whatever price he gives for that, that's the price, and there's no return. Besides for ein lam einah, ein lam tashlumi kefil, they also don't have a concept of paying double. This, if someone steals a slave, and we catch him, so he doesn't have to pay two slaves. He doesn't have to pay back double. He only pays one. Same as with the document. Same as with karka, with land. If he steals land, he doesn't have to pay two lands. And the same is with hekdesh. Okay. And he doesn't have to pay 4 or 5 times. Now, obviously, there's no 4 or 5 times by land. There's no 4 or 5 times by land. There's no 4 or 5 times by an eved. But there could be 4 or 5 times by that sacrifice that got a mum, got a blemish, and another person selling it, and turns out not selling it. Now someone stole it, and he slaughtered it and or sold it, right? Stole it and then sold it. So he doesn't have to pay 4 or 5 times because it's hekdesh. The Gemara is going to go through the explanation why each one of these halachas doesn't apply. Usually, if a watchman is watching an item, he has to make an oath that he wasn't negligent. If something happens to it, he has to take that oath. The Shemechinim doesn't have to take an oath. An unpaid watchman doesn't have to take an oath on these items, on an eved or staris or karka, even though he's watching them. He's exempt from that oath. And if it gets stolen, a paid watchman doesn't have to pay. Shimon, this is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. He says, "Kachim shechai b'achar yusan." If he's responsible for these, this is Reb Shimon. We had him about the comment. He says, "Davar that turns out to be money." What was it? Something that davar goyim l'mammon is mammon. Something that causes a financial loss is considered his own money. Reb Shimon holds that kachim shechai b'achar yusan, if when the person designated the sacrifice, he said, "I'm accepting on myself to give a sacrifice," and then he separates an animal. Then the animal gets a blemish, and he sells it, and he overcharges for that. So then, yesh lamayna, then there is overcharging, and the reason is because if something would happen to this animal, he would need to replace it, because he didn't say, "I'm giving this animal as a sacrifice." He says, "I'm accepting on myself a sacrifice." So even if this animal gets lost, he still has to bring another one. So therefore, this is considered his money, even though it's hektish, it's sacrifice. It's not, it belongs to the base of English, but it's considered his because if he were to lose it, he would have to replace it. So there is the concept of Eina there. I know as if you overcharge.
But it will be accepted the same value,
Right.
right? Now he's getting overcharged. So where would the difference go?
So usually if it's a business transaction between people and the overcharging is a certain rate, you overcharge a certain 1/6 more, then the person has to pay back. They have to pay it back. Over here, we're gonna say that that he doesn't have to pay it back. So the base of English doesn't need to pay him the extra, and if he underpaid, he doesn't have to pay up to the base of English the extra. That's if it's and if he says Harezu, then it's not considered his money because if it gets lost, because first of all, it's not his right now. And even if it gets lost, he doesn't need to replace it. So it's totally not his. And then Ein Lamayna. Reb Shimon limits what the Mishnah said.
If he is lost, doesn't have to replace it to bring another one.
Right. Because he said, I'm designating this.
Right. It doesn't belong to him anymore.
So he doesn't have to, he didn't say I'm giving an item with the value of this. He said, I'm just giving this. So if this dies, it gets lost. It's okay. I only promised that. I didn't promise another one.
I understand if he dies or if he's lost, who's shomer in the Fema? Bet Amidash or him?
It's not his responsibility. He's supposed to get it there, but if he doesn't have to replace it. Yeah. Someone pledges to an aliyah on Shabbos. He says, pledge $1,000 for a shlishi or something. So then he goes home, he sees the money's missing. So he still owes the money, right? But if he says, I'll pledge my watch, and then the watch is missing or something, he says, okay, I'm sorry.
I don't have it.
I don't have it. The watch isn't there. Over there, it's a purchase. It's different. You're buying an aliyah. It's not just like a gift. Rabbi Yehuda says that there's exemptions of Eina, the concept of Eina, by a Sefer Torah, by an animal, or by a pearl. Amrulai, they said back to him, they only said the earlier cases of Avadim. They didn't say what you're saying about the Sefer Torah. You see in the Gemara how that works. Where do we know that the concept of Eina, of price fraud, overcharging, exists, and it only exists by regular products, not by those items that we left out. The Tana Rabbana was taught in a Brisa. Brisa quotes a pasuk. If someone will sell something to his friend, it says Amisecha, one of his nation, or he purchases something from one of his nation, it says kind of miyad Amisecha, from the hand of his friend. This the hand from his member of his nation. So Yotzer Karkais, well, it says hand, automatically you're excluding land, She'ena Metaltlin, because that doesn't, you can't lift up the realty in your hand.
Right.
Yotzer Avadim, it also excludes slaves, Shokshela Karkais, that they are compared to land, because the pasuk says that you give them as an inheritance. Slaves, non-Jewish slaves, remain slaves from one generation to the next. They're passed down. Which is similar to land. Yatzer Shtaris, and it excludes the documents of debt. It says we're selling a sale. I mean, it has to be something that has intrinsic value, not something that's just a proof to a debt, which itself doesn't have any value. It itself, is just a piece of paper. And so that doesn't go under the category of the verse when it says if someone sells the sale means that he sells an item that has value. Kan Amru, here they said the Meichesh Teres of Labasam Yesh Lameina. If someone sells his documents to a perfume,
document has a value for like 100 years old. Historical.
Yeah.
On the document years ago, you can auction it off.
Right. Right. These old maps were very expensive. But here we're talking about that the point of the document is just that it says that someone owes money. This document itself doesn't have value. Note. It's like promissory note.
Yeah.
I know you.
I owe you. I don't know you. Owe you is kosher. I owe you. So if someone sells his notes to someone that does perfume, they have the perfume maker has these little jugs, little bottles, and they use the paper to stuff it to seal it. So then that's a different story. Because that the paper over there has a value as a cork. The Gemara says pshita, that's a regular item. That's not the fact that it has something written in it that doesn't change. It says, well, afukim de Rav Kana. That's we're coming to exclude Rav Kana, which we had yesterday. Damar ein aina leprutes, kamash malan yeshin leprutes. Even though those documents are so cheap, we said that there's no concept of aina for something that only costs pennies. We said that's not true now. There is aina. We're arguing on Rav Kana. It says there is aina even for a pruta. Okay. Hekdeshes. How do you know that hekdesh doesn't have the laws of Eina? Well,
Does it have a simanim?
Amar Kraf, hekdesh means consecrated. When someone's selling a product that belongs to hekdesh, Amar Kraf, it says achiv. It says
Brother, it's consecrated.
where does achiv in the pasuk? You have the pasuk there. Altainu doesn't say ishes. It's ishes achiv. A person should not overcharge his brother. Achiv lehekdesh. It's only to overcharge the brother that would go under the category of overcharging. But if it's hekdesh, then you don't have that category.
You read this?
I'm sorry.
That will land into ribis. Overcharging your brother.
There's another law about ribis. This is just overcharging. Ribis is when you lend money and he has to pay back more. Here's when you're selling an item, but you're charging him more than what it's really worth. Maskefla Rabba Bar Mamal. Rabba Bar Mamal has a question on the whole concept of here. We started saying that how do you know that land doesn't have Ina? It says because it says miyad amisecha. Something that can only be transferred from hand to hand. So Rabbi Mamam's question is, everywhere it says hand, you think that it means literally a hand? If that's the case, it says that he took all the land from his hand. Do you remember what this was referring to? Was this like Sichain maybe? Yeah. Noting that Sichain the Amorites conquered much of the land held by the first king of Moab, the verse states that Sichain captured the land from his hand, from the hand of the king of Moab. Yeah. So it says from his hand. What does it mean from his hand? Land is not in someone's hand. You can't lift up the land. What are you saying? That he took the land from his hand? He doesn't hold it. It means from his domain. So over here also, it could mean from his domain, and that wouldn't really include realty, not exclude realty. Biyadi doesn't mean to exclude anything that you can't lift up. You see, the biyadi doesn't have to mean that. You see that from that verse by Sichain. Gemara says, okay, you want to say it the other way. You want to say that it doesn't mean literally hand. But we have a brayse in Metzia Daf. This is talking about someone steals, and then you find the item in his hand, and he has to pay double. Maybe only if you find it in his hand. How do you know that it also applies if you find it in his yard? Or he never took it, he just closed the gate when this animal went in and he decides to steal it, so he just closes the gate on it. Or his enclosure or his courtyard, his roof. If you find it by him, nevertheless, in any case. Okay, exactly how that's learned over there, because it adds the word yadai. That's a discussion over there. Time of the kasser rachmanim mimatzi timatzi, but that's only because It says in the pasuk, "Kimatzi timatzi." But if it didn't say, if we didn't have that drasha, we didn't have that way of learning out. I would have understood that because it says hand, it means literally the hand. I had to have a drasha to tell me it doesn't mean literally the hand, which means that the hand is literal. Vesu, also, Tanya, we have another brayso, v'nasim biyada, talking about a woman, a man that's divorcing his wife, has to give the get into her hand. Ainli aliyada, I would only know her hand. Gaga chatzer kavifim, and how do you know that if she's not taking it in her hand? How do you know you can put it into her roof, her courtyard, or her enclosure, close the area? Talmud Laima, v'nasan, Yikol Makim, it says that if it's given in any case, well, time of the Kasar Rachman of v'nasan. That's because the Torah says v'nasan, halav hachi. If it didn't say v'nasan, hava mina kol hechet ksiv yada yada mamash, it would have understood wherever it says hand, it means literally the hand. So what are you telling me that when it says hand, it means domain? I have these other sources that say that it's literal. Elakol yada yada mamashu. Rather, every hand, it means actually a hand. And therefore, when it says when someone purchases something, you should not have price fraud. That's talking about something that's passed from hand to hand, which means not realty. So why over there did we say have a verse that we said it can't mean that he passed the
movable items.
Right, movable item. Shani Hassan, that pasuk over there, Vikachas Galartim Yade, which said by Sichen, if you have no other way of explaining it, then you can say that it's just an idiom that means domain when you say the word hand. But otherwise you just say that it means literal. It's not figurative. Okay.
The hand itself.
Yeah. In other words, if you're in this, if we're not compelled to say anything different, we say it means the hand itself. Zera's question. Someone rents something, but he pays too much for it. Yeah, someone was just joking about this Pesach, we're going back to our land, but they think people didn't hear it correctly, and they thought they said we're going back to Orlando. Yeah. So anyway, someone rents something and it gets overcharged. So is there a no there or not?
Speaking of which,
Huh?
speaking about overcharge.
Yeah. That's
So I'm sure there's I know there.
Memka Ramarachmana Valaiske. It says a sale. You're only not let overcharged for a sale. This is not a sale. This is a rental. Maybe there's no difference. Amalei Abaya. My sister Abzera. Miksiv Memkar La'ilam, does it say a sale forever? Memkar Stamiksiv, it just says a sale. It's a sale for a day. Well, it's another way of looking at a rental, is that you're buying it for the day. Now,
Airbnb.
Right. So you get overcharged.
We have
By access to secure you by access to the car.
we have a 5-star Airbnb. Super host.
Oh,
Wow.
Congratulations.
very nice. So the way you could view this is that it depends how you look at time. If you look at time as a continuum, so then it's not a sale because you don't really own it at all, because the fact that you get to go into it for a day is not. If you view at time as increments of time, that's how. So then you've purchased it entirely for these increments for this time. So it's actually yours for those increments. Depends how. It's a question over here of time. How do you view time? So
Option.
I'm sorry.
On that lease option. You rent and you're using it temporarily, and you have the option to buy it.
That's another story.
It's all relative.
No, that's the
Einstein.
Remember Jigan? Remember Jigan? Speaking as a Yiddish comedian, so he said, you look him up. But anyway, he said the theory of relativity. He says it's very simple. He says 2 hairs on my head is not a lot, but 2 hairs in my soup is more than a. Okay. Boy, Rava. Rava has a question now. Before it was Rabzeir now, it's Rava. Chitin v'zarim b'kar kamal. Very interesting question. Let's say someone has wheat and he put it in the ground. I mean, he made little holes in the ground, or like he's going to plant the wheat, and he put the wheat inside. Now, what's the din now? Mao, yesh lamayna, yen lamayna. Is there ayna by this wheat or not? Command the shadim b'kadidami. Is it considered like you put it into a vessel? Yesh lamayna, and there's ayna. Yidilma batino al gavara. Or maybe we say that no, this is not in a container. This is in the ground. It's considered ground. Is this wheat that's been planted? Is this considered ground? Or no, if it's sold, is it considered? Does it go under the category where there's no aina because there's no aina by realty? Or do we say no? That's just the way that he's containing it. It's sitting there. So, well, hechidami, what are you talking about? Ilema, if we're saying the amr iu shadai b'shita vasasad v'amleid le'shadu ba'elachamsha, he said I put in 6 bushels of wheat into this area. It's all yours for this and this price. And it turns out witnesses come and say, no, he only put in 5. So price fraud, right? He says he's giving more. It's not, and it's really less. But Rava says there's a very important piece of information that's surprising. We didn't have this until now. It says, this whole concept of Aina, that's only when you change the price, not if you change how many items you're selling. Someone buys a dozen eggs and he gets home, there's only 11 there. You say, well, it's under a 6th. It's mechila. It's not mechila because you bought 12. You had a specific amount. Right. So there's no such thing. So if you say you're putting 6 in, you only put 5 in, so that's for sure. That's for sure problematic. That's not an issue. That's not a concept of mechila or possibly. Ella damar you shadei ba kidi baila, viglai milsa leishadu kidi baila. He didn't say exactly a number. He said I put in enough. There's the amount that this property can handle. That's what I put in. That's the amount of seeds. And it turns out that he didn't put that in. So he didn't give an exact number. So therefore, the concept of Aina comes back. Price for. So yesh lamina, yen lamina. Command the shadi b'kadidam. Do we say that it's considered held in a container? Yesh lamina. So it's not realty. It just happens to be in the ground, but it's not realty. Do we say that it's nullified to the ground? Then it is considered realty. Okay,
so what if
that's his question.
Took it and there were no witnesses?
If
somebody took it and there were no witnesses.
So if someone took it, let's see in a minute. Maybe you have another point. Nishpain aleim, ayin nishpain aleim. Do you have to take an oath to swear on this? If someone says that if someone denies half of this, I guess the case was he told someone that to plant it, and the person planted 6, and he admits. The guy says that it was only 5, so he admits to 1, not the other. There's such a case like that. Does he have to swear? Because you don't swear on land. Is it put into? Is it considered thrown into a jug, and you swear on that? Do we consider it realty? Very interesting. Yesterday was the day where all the produce changes from Chadash to Yashan.
For the Omer.
For the Omer. In other words, all the grain that grows, the new grain that grew this year, we weren't allowed to eat it until the 2nd day of Pesach. And the 2nd day of Pesach, sorry?
A year back.
No. All the grain that grew this past winter and this past summer, we weren't allowed to eat. We had to keep it in storage.
Right.
And then we're allowed to eat it only after yesterday, after the 2nd day of Pesach. This is all the new grain.
Yashan.
So now it's considered yashan. Yesterday it was considered, 2 days ago it was considered chadash, and now the day passed. Now it's considered yashan. It's like a child becomes 1 year old. It's a big boy.
Now you're talking about summer. It's not the whole year.
Yeah, but whatever grew from last Pesach, in between last Pesach and this Pesach,
I
is
see.
considered all chadash. And right now it's all of it turned yashan. So let's say someone took this grain, he put it into the ground, and Pesach passes by. So do we say that it's in the ground, or do we say that it's just being held in a jug? Do we say that the Aimer, when the bringing of the Aimer or the day of the Aimer permits it? The Gemara says, 1 second, but if you have to explain your case, Ida Ashrash, are we talking about that it took root? Here the Gemara understands that we're not dealing with this actual seeds themselves. Gemara thinks we're dealing with what grows from the seeds. Now the rule is that if any seeds that are put into the ground that took root before Pesach, if seeds took root, then the Aimer already permits that grain. As long as it took root before Pesach. It's what you plant after Pesach that doesn't take root
Before the second day of Pesach.
Before the second day of Pesach. So if it took root, Tanina, we learned that in the Mishnah. If it didn't take root, Tanina, we also learned that in the Mishnah. If it took root before the Aimer permits it. And if not, then it's prohibited until the next timer. Wait till next if we're talking about the grain that's growing from these seeds.
So
Where it says Lai Tricha Dechatztino, talking about something else. You harvested, you got the case wrong. Talking about that you harvested the grain already. And you sowed it, you put it in the ground before the Aimer. And the Aimer comes with Chalafalayo and passes over it. Well, now it's in the ground. And it did not take root. Are you allowed to go and eat those seeds? Do we say, come on, do we say they were held in a jug? Now they're permissible. Do we say that they're nullified to the ground and they're not permitted? Take them. This is a question.
Yeah.
Maybe this has a question.
What was the question?
If the Aimer will permit grains that have been planted, you can pull out those grains and eat them. So it was never out of the ground by a Pesach.
He said if you grow, you can eat it before the Omer.
If it took root, yeah, if it took root before the Aimer, you can eat not the grain itself, you can eat what grows from the grain.
Which is, what is that?
Weird, because if you can eat what grows from the grain, then the Aimer permitted it, you should be allowed to eat what's in the ground as well. Yeah. Do you have any note on that, on the taking? Let me see. Rashi explains the Gemara's uncertainty. The Torah states that the Aimer offering permits grain that has been harvested, or at least taken root before the bringing of the offering. But if the harvested kernels were planted before the Aimer was brought, it is unclear what the grain may be used. If the kernels are still considered harvested after being planted, then the Aimer offering indeed permits the use. The farmer may take them from the ground and eat them, but if they are subordinated to the ground, then they are not considered grain at all. They are viewed as merely part of the earth. In that case, they do not become permitted for consumption by the Aimer.
They need to be ready to be eaten.
Yeah, not nullified to the ground. Okay, Amar Rav Chisda. Rava says in the name of his father-in-law, and I'm sorry, it's a mistake. It's not Rav Chisda, it's Rav Chasa. And some say that it's Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Chasa. Boy Rab Ami, that Rab Ami has a question. We said in our Mishnah, this is a very general discussion. We said in our Mishnah that land doesn't have a na. There's no concept of price fraud. Now, 1 second. A na is a very specific rate of how much overcharging there was. It's 1/6. Let's say he overcharged more than a 6. He charged a 5th or a 4th. a quarter, more than a sixth overcharging. What about then? That the Mishnah didn't say. So is the bittul Mecca and the whole sale becomes invalid because the rate is so high? Is that to have Aina or not? Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman says, Hadar Amar Rav Chassa. Rav Chassa said, Pashat Rav Ami. Rav Ami answered this question. Aina ein lehem bittul Mecca chish lehem. He says, there's no Aina, but there is bittul Mecca. Sale is invalid, even by realty. Wow. Yeah, changes everything that we understood. We always said, turns out there is. It's just not at 1/6. But if it's any higher, then there is. Right. Right.
Supply and demand.
That's the way we understood it. Now we're changing. We have to change our understanding.
It's also supply and demand.
Yeah, that would affect the price. That would affect the market value.
Right. That wouldn't be unfair. It's just how it is.
Price changes.
Right.
Okay. More people want it than this product.
Would be the need of a piece of property.
Same thing. Everything has its price. Right. Could be more expensive. Not prices are prices that
Yeah.
go over the price. The things that they're
Location.
But also, sometimes it could be all like a double lot, and nobody in that community has a double lot.
That's why it's worth more.
Yeah, but that
But
would
it
be
still
a
has a
price.
worth value if you overcharge on that. That's what.
It doesn't matter if the buyer accepts that he's overpaying.
Oh, for sure, if he accepts. If he knows about it, then that's a different story. We're talking about what the person doesn't know. Yeah, that's where Enoch comes in.
Oh, you need to notify.
If you notify him, you say, look, I'm charging you this because I don't really want to sell, but if you really want it, pay this price. So then it's not considered Enoch. But if the person says, oh no, this is the price, don't worry, it's all, everything's good, this is it. Then you go home and you find out that you were overcharged, then that would be Enoch.
Happens to me a lot of times. There's a loan involved, the bank sends an appraiser. And the bank says, oh, this is worth 800. And then the buyer really wants it, and we'll give them like the extra money like cash on top. They say $1 million, give them an extra 200. But the appraiser gives them the paper, look, it's worth 800.
So that means he knows. That's why there's no.
Yeah. And now we have a discussion here. The following two sages are going to make a statement in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. These two sages are Rabbi Yoina and Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yoina amar Hekdeshis, Rabbi Yirmiyah amar Karkais. Rabbi Yoina made the statement regarding Hekdesh, and Rabbi Yirmiyah made it regarding land. And both these statements were said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. The statement goes like this: that there is no Aina, but there is Bittul Mekach. Well, Rabbi Yoina said it's about Hekdesh. Mandamar Hekdeshus, which is Rabbi Yoina. So for sure, there's no Aina by land. But what's the explanation for that? Because if Hekdesh, what are you going to say, that you misled God when you? So if there's no Aina. If we say that there's bittul mekach, that the sale is invalid when it comes to hekdesh, then for sure when it comes to a friend, another person, we could for sure say that there was a mistake here, and the sale is invalid. Mandar makarkois, but if you say it the other way, that it's only by a friend, and it's very possible that you can say that by hekdesh, there was a price fraud by hekdesh. You can say that the sale is still good, even though it was at a higher rate. And we'll explain this to the Shmuel. Like Shmuel says, no, this is following Rabbi Yirmiyah now. That if someone redeems something that was consecrated, was worth a mana, that's 100 coins, he redeems it just for a pruta, which is even less than 1 coin. So it's still a valid redemption, which means that there's no price fraud when it comes to hekdesh. That would follow that opinion. Tanan Hassam was taught in the Mishnah.
Redeem for this and the value.
According to this, you can redeem less than the value. Yeah.
What makes it to be lower?
if someone says, I'm redeeming it for just this one coin, its value is 100 coins. I'm redeeming it just for one coin.
He is offers that.
Let me leave it over here.
Oh, it's being started, Professor.
We're on the
Shut
right
up.
page. We're on the right page. Now.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Someone want to go over with the professor what was said.